The alien fleet appeared without any sound or warning on a clear summer morning. 20,000 black ships filled the sky above Earth like a storm of knives. They came from the Krell Dominion, a vast empire of insect-like beings who ruled hundreds of worlds. The Krell viewed humans as pests, nothing more than creatures to contain or remove. No message of peace arrived, only a single cold broadcast in every language on the planet. Surrender your strongest specimens for study or face slow extinction, the voice said. The ships formed a perfect ring around Earth, at a height no human vessel could reach without dying. Any ship that tried to leave burned in seconds, turned to glowing dust by thin beams of light. Satellites vanished one by one, replaced by silence in the sky. People stood in streets and looked up, mouths open, eyes wide with fear. News channels showed the same image again and again, the dark wall of ships blocking the sun. Governments met in secret bunkers, leaders from every nation speaking fast and loud. The United States offered its remaining space force. China shared its orbital weapons. Russia brought maps of hidden launch sites. India spoke of millions ready to work night and day. Japan promised quiet machines that could think faster than men. They all agreed on one thing. The Krell wanted Earth broken without a single boot on the ground. The aliens did not land troops. They did not need to. Instead, they turned mirrors in space, giant sheets of silver that caught sunlight and sent it away from farms. Fields in the American Midwest grew pale, then brown, then black. Rice paddies in Southeast Asia dried to cracked mud. Wheat in Ukraine stopped growing under the cold, stolen light. Food vanished from shelves in days. Supermarkets locked their doors. Guards with guns stood outside to stop crowds. Ration cards appeared, printed in a hurry, names and numbers stamped in red ink. Each person received one small pack of grain paste per day, mixed with water to make it stretch. Children learned hunger before they learned words like full or enough. In cities, people dug gardens on rooftops, in parking lots, between cracked concrete. They planted anything that grew fast. Potatoes, beans, even weeds if they filled a stomach. Basements became farms, lit by weak bulbs, rows of green tubes filled with swirling water and tiny roots. Factories that once made cars now built tanks for algae, simple tanks that bubbled day and night. Scientists worked without sleep, mixing food from air and waste, turning garbage into calories. They called it the survival diet, bitter gray blocks that tasted like nothing and kept people alive. The Krell watched from above, sending drones down, sometimes to take samples of soil or water, or bodies left in the open. The drones never attacked. They simply collected and left. Collection felt like a promise. More would come when humans grew weak enough. Months passed and the first signs of real collapse appeared. Hospitals filled with thin people whose hearts beat too slow. Schools closed because teachers could not stand long enough to teach. Streets grew quiet. Cars sat empty, rust starting at the edges. Yet something strange began to happen under the hunger. People stopped fighting over the last scraps of bread. Instead, they shared what little they had, passing bowls hand to hand without a word. Neighbors who once ignored each other now knocked on doors with small gifts: a potato, a handful of rice. Strangers helped strangers carry water upstairs or fix broken pipes. Old hatreds between countries faded because the enemy above was the same for all. Leaders spoke on radio, not of victory, but of holding on one more day. "We are still here," they said again and again. "We breathe, we eat, we think. Enough for now." Deep underground, in places the Krell could not see, work never stopped. Tunnels stretched for miles, lit by strings of yellow lights. Men and women in dusty coats bent over tables covered with pieces of alien metal. They had pulled fragments from crashed scout ships, small drones that drifted too low and died against mountains. Engineers cut the black shells open with torches, revealing strange wires and glowing cores. Scientists studied them day after day, writing notes in faded notebooks. They learned how the Krell engines worked, how their weapons fired, how their ships talked to each other without sound. Every secret stolen from the enemy became a weapon in waiting. In hidden caves near the equator, huge machines hummed, railguns taller than houses. They pointed upward through long tubes, drilled straight into rock. Teams loaded heavy rods of tungsten metal, polished until they shone like mirrors. One day, fly faster than bullets, faster than thought. But not yet. The time was wrong. The fleet still perfect, the orbit still tight. Above ground, winter came hard. Snow fell on dead fields, ice covered empty highways. People burned furniture, books, anything that caught fire to stay warm. Smoke rose from chimneys in thin gray lines, the only sign of life from space. The Krell sent another message, this time with pictures. Screens showed children with empty eyes, old men too weak to stand, cities silent under dust. The voice spoke again. Your time grows short. Choose submission or silence. No one answered. Instead, a single radio tower in the Siberian cold sent one short reply in every language. We choose to live. The words traveled upward, bounced off the metal ring, and vanished into nothing. The Krell did not reply. They did not need to. They believed time was their ally, hunger their strongest soldier. They were wrong. The dark months that followed, humans built more than farms and guns. They built memory. Every empty belly, every dead friend, every night without sleep became fuel. Not for despair, but for something colder and sharper. They remembered the taste of normal food, the smell of rain on warm earth, the sound of children laughing without pain. They remembered what the Krell tried to take, and they swore in silence never to forget. The blockade held firm. 20,000 ships still circled, patient and sure. But beneath the surface, in tunnels and caves and hidden rooms, a new kind of strength grew. It was not loud. It made no sound. It simply waited, like a seed under frozen ground, waiting for the right moment to break through. The first year of the blockade became known as the Long Hunger. Earth turned quiet under the black ring of ships. People moved slower now, bodies thin, faces sharp like knives. In the big cities, streets once full of noise stood empty except for the wind. Shops stayed closed, windows broken by hands that found nothing inside. Crowds no longer fought for food. They simply waited in long lines for the daily ration. Government trucks rolled through neighborhoods at dawn, dropping small bags of gray paste. Each bag held enough to keep a person breathing for one more day, nothing more. Children stopped playing games. They sat in corners, staring at walls or at the sky they could no longer see clearly. Mothers rocked babies who cried without tears because no water remained to make them. Fathers dug through trash piles, looking for anything that once held nutrition, a scrap of bread, moldy fruit peel, even paper soaked in soup long ago, became places of waiting, not healing. Doctors worked by candlelight, or weak battery lamps, hands shaking from their own hunger. They gave what little medicine remained to the youngest first, then to the old. Many did not make it through the night, bodies carried out in silence, wrapped in old sheets. Graves filled parks, playgrounds, empty lots, anywhere soft earth could be found. No one spoke much at funerals. Words felt too heavy to carry. Yet, in the middle of all this death, something stubborn refused to die. In hidden basements, under schools, under factories, under apartment blocks, new farms grew. Rows of plastic tubes glowed with pale blue light. Water moved inside carrying tiny green plants. Algae bloomed thick and fast. Scientists called it spirulina. Others just called it green hope. Workers stirred vats day and night, adding nutrients, scraped from walls or pulled from air filters. The smell filled every room, sour and thick, but no one complained. They ate the stuff warm from the pot, or pressed into hard cakes that lasted weeks. Factories that once built phones now built machines to turn waste into food. Old tires, plastic bottles, rotten fruit all went into huge processors that chewed and heated and pressed. Out came bars of protein, dense and dark, tasting like burnt rubber, but filling the belly for hours. People learned to chew slowly to make each bite feel like more. In mountain regions, deep caves became cities. Tunnels stretched miles under stone, lit by strings of salvage lights, powered by small geothermal wells. Families lived in carved rooms, sleeping on mats made from recycled cloth. Children studied by tablet screens that ran on hand-crank generators. Teachers told stories of the old world, oceans, forests, animals free to run. The young listened wide-eyed, hungry for pictures more than food. Above ground, soldiers patrolled in thin groups, rifles heavy on their shoulders. Bony shoulders. They guarded convoys of food trucks from desperate gangs that still roamed the edges. Fights happened quick and brutal, but fewer each month. Most people understood now that survival meant working together, not tearing apart. Nations that once pointed weapons at each other now shared everything. American engineers flew to Chinese labs in secret planes that hugged the ground. Russian physicists met Indian coders in underground bunkers lit by single bulbs. They spoke in broken English and gestures, drawing plans on scraps of paper. Together they built the first hidden launch sites deep in deserts and jungles. Small rockets rose at night, silent and dark, carrying probes toward the enemy ships. Some probes died fast, burned by defense beams. Others slipped through, sending back pictures of alien hulls, engines, weak points. Every image, every scrap of data traveled back to Earth on tight radio bursts. Over them, night after night, eyes red from strain. They found patterns in the Krell patrols, gaps in their watch times, places where shields dropped for seconds. These tiny weaknesses became seeds of hope planted in the minds of everyone who knew. The Krell continued their slow war without hurry. They broadcast new videos every week, showing empty cities, thin humans crawling through ruins. The pictures played on every working screen in the world. Voices in calm tones said, "See your future, submit and live." Most people turned the screens off or smashed them. A few listened and whispered about giving up. Those whispers died fast, crushed under the weight of shared anger. In one small town in the south, a woman named Maria stood on a rooftop garden she had built from broken bricks. She looked up at the dark ships blocking the stars. Her hands held a single potato, grown in poor soil, but real and hers. She cut it into pieces, planted them again, speaking soft words to the dirt. Around her neighbors did the same, turning every patch of ground into something alive. Across the ocean in a frozen city, a man called Ivan worked in a tunnel factory. He welded parts for a new kind of engine, one that might one day carry humans past the blockade. His fingers bled from cold metal, but he smiled when the piece fit perfect. He thought of his daughter who had not eaten meat in a year, yet still drew pictures of flying ships. In a desert research base, a team of women and men watched data streams from stolen alien tech. They laughed for the first time in months when a small test device bent light around itself for 3 full seconds. Stealth, they whispered the word like a prayer. The hunger carved deep lines in every face, yet those lines held determination now. Not fear, not despair, but something harder, forged in empty stomachs and sleepless nights. When it would end. They asked how they would win. And in asking, they began to answer themselves. One small step, one hidden factory, one shared meal at a time. The Krell waited above, certain that time would finish the job. Hunger would break the species. They did not see the quiet fire growing below, a fire fed by memory, by rage, by the simple refusal to vanish. Year 1 ended not with surrender, but with a promise kept in silence. We are still here, and we are learning. The blockade held tight, but the humans beneath it no longer broke. They bent, they adapted, they waited, and in the waiting they grew teeth. The years, between 1 and 5, passed like slow grinding stones. Earth no longer looked like the blue marble it once was from space. Patches of green had turned gray. Dust storms rose over dead plains. Yet under the surface, life pulsed stronger than ever. People moved into the deep places, tunnels carved through rock and ice. Whole cities grew beneath mountains, hidden from the black ships above. Lights strung along ceilings cast long shadows on concrete walls. Families slept in rows on narrow bunks, sharing blankets patched 100 times. Children learned math by counting ration bars, physics by studying stolen alien parts. Teachers spoke in low voices, telling stories of old freedoms to keep hope alive. Air smelled of metal and damp stone, mixed with the faint sweet rot of growing things. Vertical farms lined every wide tunnel. Tubes of water carried spinach, kale, beans, upward toward weak lamps. Workers in faded coveralls checked pH levels, trimmed leaves, collected drops of condensation for drinking. No one wasted a single calorie. Everything returned to the cycle. Waste fed new growth. Power came from deep earth heat. Thorium reactors hummed in sealed chambers. Small fusion tests glowed in labs, promising more light, more heat, more life. Engineers worked without rest, building machines that could one day break the sky. They called the hidden network the Forge, because it shaped something new from pain. In the Forge, minds met across continents, through buried cables and tight beam signals. Russian coders shared algorithms with American hackers. Chinese biologists traded gene maps with Indian doctors. They built a library of stolen knowledge, every piece of Krell tech taken apart and understood. A scout drone captured in the first month gave up its secrets slowly. Its core held light-bending materials, its skin absorbed radar, its eyes saw in ways humans never could. Humans copied what they could, improved what they dared. Whisper-class ships came first, small silent craft coated in black absorbent paint. They launched from hidden silos, hugged the ground, flew low under cloud cover. Some reached orbit, some burned, others drifted outward carrying seeds of revenge. Porcupine mines followed, thousands of tiny spheres scattered in wide orbits. Each mine waited patient, packed with shrapnel and simple triggers. When a Krell ship passed close, the mine woke, spat death in every direction. The aliens noticed losses at first. They blamed malfunctions, then collisions. They swept space with beams, found nothing, because the mines hid well. Human pilots trained in simulators buried under Antarctic ice. They flew mock battles against ghost Krell ships, learning every turn, every weak spot. Bodies stayed lean, minds grew sharp, reflexes honed by endless practice. Some pilots linked directly to machines. Nerves wired to controls, thoughts became motion. They felt the ship like an extra limb, fast and deadly. Soldiers changed too, genes tweaked in secret labs. Muscles held strength longer on little food. Lungs pulled more oxygen from thin air. Wounds closed faster. Blood carried more fight. They called themselves the Hollowed, lean, hard people who had stared at death and stared back. Above ground, the surface world grew wilder. Forests reclaimed empty cities. Vines climbed skyscrapers. Deer wandered through cracked streets. Humans who stayed topside lived like ghosts, moving at night, hiding by day. They scavenged old stores, raided abandoned trucks, traded stories around small fires. Some groups turned feral, hunting rats, fighting over scraps. Most held on, clinging to the old ways, sharing what they found, sending word to the deep cities. Every month, scouts slipped through the blockade in tiny pods. They risked everything to bring back Slivers of enemy tech fuel cells, weapon fragments, data cores. Some never returned, their last signals cut short by sudden silence. Those who made it back arrived half dead, carried by comrades through storm and snow. They spoke of close calls, of beams that missed by inches, of the cold void outside. Each return fed the forge, new tools, new ideas, new fury. The Krell grew lazy in their watch. Their huge ships rotated crews into long sleep cycles. Patterns became predictable. Admirals sent reports home saying the mammals had broken, no threat remained. They broadcast victory messages to their worlds, showing dead cities, silent humans. Pride made them blind. They stopped looking closely at the small shadows moving below. In Year 4, a test happened deep in the Pacific. A railgun fired its first full shot. A tungsten rod screamed upward at terrible speed, punched through a lone Krell scout. The ship bloomed into fire, debris rained down for days, glowing in the night. The aliens searched, blamed a meteor, said nothing more. Humans smiled in the dark. That one shot cost years of work, but proved the path. More accelerators rose, buried under stone, pointed at the sky. Teams loaded rods, checked alignments, ran simulations until fingers bled on keyboards. They knew the day would come when all guns spoke at once. In hidden hangars, fighters took shape. Frames welded from salvaged steel, engines rebuilt hotter than before. Pilots painted names on hulls, lost loved ones, places once green, now ash. Art grew in tunnels, walls covered with drawings of burning ships, of humans rising. Songs spread, mouth to mouth, quiet anthems of defiance, sung under breath. Laughter returned, rare and sharp like broken glass. People told jokes about hunger, about thin soup, about the fat aliens waiting to die. Humor kept spirits from cracking when despair pressed close. Year 5 dawned, cold end. The forge stood ready. Factories full, silos loaded, minds calm. Humans no longer counted days of starvation. They counted hours until payback. The blockade still circled, 20,000 ships, sure of their power. They did not know the planet below had turned into a clenched fist. Every tunnel, every cave, every hidden room held breath, waiting for the signal, waiting for the moment when patience ended and fury began. The waiting felt longer than all the hungry years combined, but it would not last much longer. The forge had finished its work. Now came the breaking. The turning came on a gray morning in the 5th year, when the sky still held its iron ring. No trumpet sounded, no grand speeches filled the air, only a single coded pulse sent through buried cables. Across every continent, accelerators woke from their long sleep. Deep in mountain hearts, railguns hummed. Power surged through coils. Tungsten rods slid into place. In hidden silos, whisper ships powered up, engines cold and silent until the last second. Pilots strapped in, lean faces, calm eyes, fixed on screens that showed the enemy above. The signal arrived clean and sharp. Go. Thousands of rods launched at once. No flame, no roar. Just streaks of metal, moving faster than sound. They climbed straight up, punched through atmosphere, left glowing trails that faded fast. The Krell fleet noticed too late. Alarms screamed across command decks. Shields flickered, tried to harden, but the rods traveled at .4 light speed. Impact came before. Hulls split open like cracked eggs. Atmosphere vented in white clouds. Crews tumbled into void. Dreadnoughts bloomed with fire. Secondary explosions rippled through formations. One admiral's ship lost its bridge in a single strike. Metal twisted, bodies frozen in mid-scream. Panic spread through the armada. Ships turned, tried to reform lines, but gaps appeared everywhere. At the same moment, porcupine minds woke in their thousands. Tiny spheres spun, spat shrapnel in wide cones, tore through armor, ripped engines apart. Krell vessels listed, spun, collided, debris fields grew thick, blocking their own sensors. Whisper drones slipped close, undetected, small black shapes against blacker space. They attached to fuel tanks, command nodes, reactor housings, then vanished in bright antimatter flashes. Blossoms of white light marked each kill, silent, deadly, precise. Human fighters launched next, swarms of lean craft, painted in red and black. Pilots felt the neural links snap into place. Minds merged with machines. They flew like arrows, dodged beams, closed on crippled ships. Boarding teams followed breaching charges. Cut hulls, monomolecular blades flashed in corridors. Inside alien vessels, gravity shifted, air hissed. Thin insect crews fought with claws and energy lances. Humans moved faster, harder. Hollowed bodies fueled by rage, years of hunger turned to fury. They cut through guards, sealed hatches, took bridges one by one. Captured ships turned guns on their former fleet. Confusion grew into chaos. Krell admirals ordered retreat, but retreat meant scattering into the mines, and the rods still coming. Some ships tried to bombard Earth. Lances of plasma stabbed downward. Cities burned. Tokyo lost half its towers. New York harbor boiled, Mumbai streets filled with fire. Smoke rose thick and black, covered the planet like a shroud. Many missed, because the fleet above bled and broke. Humans did not flinch. They had waited 5 years for this moment. Underground bunkers held firm. People watched feeds in silence, fists clenched. When a Krell cruiser fell in flames across the Pacific, cheers echoed through tunnels. The noise rolled from chamber to chamber, growing louder, raw, full of years of held breath. Above, the battle turned into slaughter. Human pilots hunted in packs, dove through wreckage, tore apart stragglers, boarded dreadnoughts, room by room, corridor by corridor. They found queens in command chambers, huge insect forms, curled in fear. No mercy came. Blades fell. Queens died. Queens burned. Captured data cores spilled secrets, fleet movements, homeworld coordinates, queen lineages. Humans took it all, stored it, fed it to the growing armada. By the end of the first day, the blockade shattered. Fewer than half the original 20,000 ships remained, limped away, trailing fire. The rest drifted as broken hulks, tombs for billions of Krell lives. Earth looked up through smoke and saw stars again, faint but real. People stepped out from tunnels into ash-covered streets. They breathed air thick with soot, yet it tasted free. Children pointed at the sky, where black shapes no longer blocked the light. The turning had happened, not with fanfare, but with cold, calculated violence. Years of starvation, years of hiding, years of building poured out in hours. The Krell had come to contain a pest. They found a predator instead. Human leaders met in a bunker still standing, maps spread across tables. They spoke of next steps, not defense, but pursuit. Captured ships already landed in hidden bays. Engineers swarmed over them. They tore out alien reactors, rebuilt them stronger, hotter, meaner. Black hulls painted over with red symbols, names of lost cities, names of dead friends. Trained fast pilots, who had flown Whispers, now flew dreadnoughts. Soldiers who boarded scouts, now commanded boarding teams larger, deadlier. The forge had become an arsenal. Earth no longer waited. It prepared to follow. The Krell retreat scattered their remaining fleet toward jump points. Some tried to regroup. Others fled home to warn their worlds. Warnings arrived too late. Human ships already moved outward, silent hunters on cold trails. They carried no flags, only purpose. The turning marked the end of defense and the start of something darker. Humanity had starved for 5 full years. Now the galaxy would learn what happened when that hunger turned outward. The broken blockade floated above a scarred planet. Debris rained down for weeks, glowing meteors lighting nights. People watched from rooftops, from ruined towers, from deep bunkers. They did not cheer long. The fire inside still burned. Had only begun, and they intended to finish it. The reckoning waited just beyond the next jump. Where queens once ruled in safety, where empires once thought themselves eternal, humans came lean, hard, unforgiving. They brought the lessons of hunger, and they brought fire. The reckoning began the moment the last blockade ship burned and fell silent. Earth no longer waited in tunnels or caves. People poured out into the light. Smoke still hung thick over ruined cities, yet faces turned upward without fear. Captured Krell vessels landed in hidden valleys. Engineers swarmed like ants over black hulls. They ripped out reactors, replaced weak parts with human designs that ran hotter and cleaner. Engines roared louder, weapons grew sharper, shields thickened with stolen tech, improved by rage. Ships once sleek and alien now wore red paint streaks like blood across their sides. Names appeared in white letters: lost homes, lost children, lost years, carved deep. Crews boarded fast, men and women hollowed by hunger, now filled with purpose. Pilots took seats, soldiers checked blades, scientists loaded data cores full of enemy secrets. The first fleet lifted, quiet at first, then thunderous as engines woke fully. Jumped outward following trails left by fleeing Krell stragglers. No broadcasts, no warnings, just cold pursuit across the void. The Krell home systems lay far, but humans had learned patience over 5 starving years. They used that patience now to hunt without mercy. First came the outer colonies, small worlds the Dominion used for mining and breeding. Human ships arrived in silos, dropped from jump points like shadows. Porcupine mines seeded ahead. Whispered drones slipped close. Antimatter charges bloomed. Colony domes cracked. Atmosphere vented. Queens screamed through open channels. Humans boarded what remained, cut through guards, took larvae samples, burned the rest. No prisoners, no terms, only fire and silence afterward. Word spread through Krell space fast. Panic followed faster. Queens ordered fleets to gather. Admirals called for reinforcements that never came. Human armadas grew with each victory. Captured ships joined the hunt. Painted red and black. Numbers swelled from dozens to hundreds, engines tuned to outrun anything the enemy flew. In deep space battles turned brutal, humans fought like they had starved, like they remembered every empty day. Boarding teams moved room to room, corridors slick with green blood, claws met steel. Pilots danced through wreckage, neural links singing with adrenaline. They took no joy in killing, yet they took no pause either. The Dominion core worlds waited next, jewels of the Empire, vast hives under purple skies. Humans arrived in waves, first scouts, then hunters, then the full storm. Railguns spoke again, rods punched through orbital rings, turned defense platforms to scrap. Whisper ships ghosted past shields, attached charges, turned command stations to expanding gas. Fleets clashed in high orbit. Debris fields grew thick enough to hide entire armadas. Krell ships fought hard. Desperate queens threw everything into it. Energy lances, plasma storms, claw fighters swarmed, like angry insects. Humans answered with everything they had, forged in hunger and hidden forges. Fighters tore through swarms. Dreadnoughts traded blows at knife range. Boarders breached queen chambers, found huge forms curled in terror. Blades fell. Queens died. Messages of surrender cut short by plasma fire. One by one the core worlds fell. Cities of crystal and chitin turned to molten glass. Billions of Krell lives ended in bright flashes, kinetic fury, plasma rain. The Dominion shattered like dry bone under a hammer. Surviving queens broadcast pleas across open channels, voices trembling in every tongue. They offered tribute, territory, peace, anything to stop the red tide. Earth sent no reply, only more ships, more rods, more fire. The burning retribution lasted exactly as long as the starvation had. 5 years compressed into 5 terrible minutes across 100 systems. When the last queen fell, silence spread through the Orion Arm. Human fleets slowed, then stopped. Engines cooled, weapons powered down. Crews stood on bridges, looked at stars that once belonged to an empire, now ash. They did not cheer long, the weight of what they had done settled heavy. Yet no regret came, only the quiet knowledge that survival demanded this price. Back on Earth, people rebuilt slowly. Fields turned green again under unblocked sun. Water flowed clean through new pipes. Children ran through streets, laughed loud without the shadow of ships above. Schools opened. Teachers told the full story, no softening, no lies. They spoke of hunger, of the forge, of the turning of the fire that followed. New generations listened, wide-eyed, learned the lesson carved in bone. Never again would humanity kneel. Never again would they wait to be broken. A single transmission went out from a rebuilt tower in the rebuilt. It traveled on tight beams to every listening post, every surviving world. The words came simple and final. We'll starved for 5 years. You burned for 5 minutes. Next time, remember our names. No one claimed the galaxy, no flags planted on alien soil. Humans returned home, most of them. Some stayed out there, watching the edges, keeping watch. The stars belonged to whoever could hold them. Humanity held them now, not by right, but by the simple truth of endurance. They had been tested in the hardest way possible, and they had answered. The blockade that meant to erase them had instead sharpened them into something new. A species that remembered hunger, remembered fire, remembered the cost of mercy given too soon. In quiet nights, people looked up at clear skies, saw no black ring, only endless light. They breathed deep, tasted freedom, hard won, and in that breath they carried the promise, if any empire ever came again with ships and ultimatums, Earth would be ready, not with pleas or diplomacy, but with the cold lessons of 5 years without enough, and the burning reply that followed. The story of the blockade entered history not as tragedy, but as forging. 20,000 ships came to contain a pest. They left only echoes and warnings whispered among the stars. Underestimate humans at your peril. They starve, they build, they wait, then they burn. And when they burn, nothing stands afterward.